than last time. It has been a couple of weeks. I am your host, George Tarrant, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, and the talent, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy, and it's good to have you back on board in a powered state where I am not left to my own devices. I think anybody who sat and watched me fumble for 10 minutes like Garth in Wayne's World, I'm having a good time. Anyone who had to sit through that and me actually cutting the feed and putting on Little Spanish Flea or something just to kill some time while we figured out what the F was going on. Anybody who saw that will be grateful to have the real talent behind it, the power behind the throne.
You're the talent, I'm the power, which ironically I ran out of.
I didn't even think about that bit. There we go. People who are observant watchers of the show might notice there's something a bit different about the room he's in, and that would be
we're doing together. This is weird, right?
This is weird.
Look at this. There's I like it. We're looking at the screens, and there's high definition on one side and crap definition on the other, and warped face.
We haven't actually done an in-person show. We were
we haven't.
When you arrived earlier this evening, we haven't done an in-person show for about 2 years. 2 years since Electric Fried Brain Studios was forced to shut down due to multiple violations by the health department,
as well as God.
So it's we did attempt to actually have a live in-person show from your place last January or February. It was thwarted by a biblical rainstorm. So I feel like the flying spaghetti monster has something against us because,
well, we keep on talking about God and we keep on forgetting to actually refer to the all-powerful demigod of the 9 hells that we actually do support, and sometimes they get jealous.
Apparently so. It's something about us recording the show. It seems to be pissing off the universe and saying, no, you shall not.
And stick around to find out what happens this week.
I was going to say, if you guys listen to the show or watch the show, you probably have a very good idea about why the gods are trying to stop us. It should be obvious by now. But I think we initially had if you saw one of the advertisements, I think we initially had planned to have the man himself, Julian Smith, on the show.
Smart,
to talk about why he subjected us to Firewalk of Me. But I think he may have been parlayed or called into an emergency recording session.
Well, with ladies and gentlemen, I have to deal with the talent on a regular basis, and Julian is, I think it's fair to say, on another level, and
he's successful.
And we're successful. It's just we use a different rating of success.
We define success.
Yeah, out of 7. And frankly, the power outage just insulted Julian too much, and he's vowed to never come on here again until he chooses that he wants to.
It's the prima donnas. We'll hope to have him on next week if we can. He's a busy man with fingers in lots of different pies, and maybe next week he might actually be able to have. We did talk about him having come on twice. But we might be able to cover it all next week and never see him again. So that'd be a good thing.
But the good news is for everyone out there, he will probably be on this show before his next podcast is released, because it does take a while.
Boom! I did see his co-host on the weekend. I did ask him about the Smith Cut, and was greeted with a very wishy-washy answer about when we're going to see it. It'll be like Chinese democracy with Guns N' Roses.
Oh yes, okay, there we go. So # release the Smith Cut.
I've been trying it. It's I've seen some early cuts. It's promising to be like Heaven's Gate all over again.
Oh, see, beautiful. Now let's get on with the show. Let's talk about it. So last time we talked about Sid and Nancy, one of the movies that really kind of elevated the presence of Gary Oldman in Hollywood. And I decided to follow on from that, going through to the 1996 Kenneth Branagh directed, written for the screen, produced magnum opus, 4 hours. I forgot about that 4 hour element. Hamlet.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, and that's one way of describing it. Long. That's definitely a way
Another
of
word
describing
would
it.
be tiresome, self-indulgent.
That's 2 words.
There's a hyphen.
It is allowed.
Dull.
It's really pompous, isn't it?
So I should be upfront and say I'm not overly familiar with Hamlet as a play. What was Shakespeare period? I mean, I studied Macbeth in high school, so I'm kind of familiar.
The Scottish play.
Familiar with that one. But mostly during this film, if I was getting confused about a plot point, my strategy was to refer to The Lion King.
Because that is a very accurate analogy. It is essentially a rip-off of Hamlet, as Disney does want to do quite often with many of their things. I studied Hamlet a lot, to my detriment, but this is one that I actually got to play the part of Hamlet once in a local production, and it was the 15-minute Hamlet. So it was condensed to 15 minutes, and then as an encore, we did a 3-minute version. So 4.5 hours. Who do they think they are? Zack Schneider?
I have a friend who is an actor in Melbourne. She's starring in the role of the starring role in Merchant of Venice, coming up later this year in Strathmore. I should remember the name of her character. Portia is the name of her character.
Okay, yep.
And so I had to, she is trained, an actual actor, a thespian like yourself. And I had to ask, have she ever been involved in the production of Hamlet? And she said it was actually, her first directed play she ever directed was Hamlet. I mean, after she finished acting school. And apparently it took 2.5 hours. And so I wonder, I mean, I'm not familiar. I have to imagine if you're doing a 2.5 hour version of the play, that you must be chopping stuff out of the actual original text.
Well, I think a large portion of it is the pacing, because this is really played for the drama, really, and every nuanced bit. Like there's a flow and a pattern to the way that Shakespeare delivers the monologues for his characters, and there's a constant energy to this, and there is so much more kind of theatricality attempted to be pushed into this. I feel like this is not the first time. While I'm talking about this, have a look and see when he directed Much Ado About Nothing.
I think that was about 5 years before. It was early 90s, I think.
I think so. But that
93.
Was 93, so only a couple of years. He ran through a bit of a bringing Shakespeare to
King Henry V,
Henry
V in 89, Much Ado About Nothing 93, Hamlet 96.
Yeah, this one definitely feels like his attempt to be really taken seriously as a dramatic director and creator. And
he did Othello the year before.
Jesus, see, it's tons and tons and tons of Shakespeare. He was trying to bring it to the masses, and good respect to him for that.
True, but I would argue that this is not the way.
No, it is definitely not. Watching this again, it really reminded me of what it was like being taught Shakespeare in school by people who didn't actually know how to translate it to make it interesting for others. Like, you look at, obviously, the most famous 3 Shakespeare plays, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and Macbeth. I think those are the 3 most famous ones. Like, this movie has, this play has, alas, poor Yorick, the famous one.
To be or not to be, that is a question.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's quotes where you just go, yeah, I get that reference. I've never seen the source material, but it's famous for that. But this is played so dramatically that you kind of, it feels like you need to have like language translations.
I did feel like I needed subtitles.
Yeah, and it's just really, it's not that they're not speaking articulately, it's just that it is perfect recreation of what the Shakespearean...
And it's rapid fire.
Yeah, and just kind of going, and there's like, oh, to what, the what of this and that and that earth, and it's like, oh, wait, you just used the double, triple negative? What the fuck? It's really hard to follow, and it makes it arduous to watch. which is a shame because there are some fantastic performances in it. Even if they do kind of generally all fall in the melodramatic scope of
it felt again. I don't think I've ever seen an actual live acted out theatrical version of a Shakespeare play. Period. I think it's always been.
I'll have to take you to one.
The films. Well, I will be seeing my friend play Portia in Merchant of Venice when it opens in a couple of months. So that will be my first ever theatrical experience of Shakespeare. But I feel like this looks like a film play.
Yeah, very much so. The way that the settings, it's pretty much all either in the throne room or in little annexes off of that. This is kind of how I felt like with what was that shitty fucking horrible musical with Renee Zellweger,
Chicago?
Yes, Chicago. It was just this filmed play, and it just suffered because of that. There have been far better interpretations of Hamlet filmed, and it's like, okay, this is actually interesting because it is an interesting story. It is a compelling story, but this is just the most studious interpretation.
Well, the trivia here says the first full-length movie version of Hamlet ever made using the second quarto from 1604 text with additions from the first folio, 1623, to create an idealized inverted commas complete Hamlet. I don't know what the fuck the second quarto and the first folio are, but I have to imagine maybe it's like remaking Lord of the Rings and shoving stuff in from the Silmarillion.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is the director's cut, and I certainly don't remember like the opening of it. There's a lot of kind of foreshadowing of the character of Fortinbras, and it's like, okay, yeah, he's name checked in the pieces that I've read, but I don't remember kind of having so much time spent on him in the first act, which incidentally, it takes like 2 hours and 45 minutes to get to the intermission.
Yeah.
Maybe even 3 hours, and you kind of go, now make this a 3-parter, please.
It did. That said, I am criticizing it a bit for looking like a film play, but it looks spectacular.
Oh, yes.
It's just filmed in 65 millimeter.
Yeah.
So I imagine it would look amazing on a really big screen.
Mm-hmm.
But even on television, on my TV, it still looks really beautiful.
It still holds up as a beautiful production. It is really lovely. There's a movie that was kind of experimental called Russian Ark, and it's all...
I've seen it.
Yeah, the one-shot movie. And the way that the sets are, and particularly, obviously, the period that this is set, there is a lot of similarity to that. And it did make me think, yeah, that's actually really cool. If you were able to just film in and around this set and just kind of follow through, that'd be amazing. I do kind of feel like reading that bit about the complete thing, I feel like there should be a new version where they interject Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead throughout this as well, and just cut that in so it is literally the complete story. That would be funny.
I was going to say it has a spectacular cast.
Holy shit! Yes.
On top of it being, the sets look incredible. The costumes are beautiful. I mean, how often do I talk about costumes? I don't, but the costuming is beautiful.
Yeah.
The art direction is incredible. The bits where it doesn't look theatrical, with like soldiers running, masses of soldiers running through the courtyard of it. That looks amazing. But on top of that, it has a wonderful, wonderful cast of including, Richard Attenborough, Brian Blessed, Gordon's alive.
This is possibly his most subdued role.
Very much so. I'm like, I've him. Kenneth Branagh, of course, who directed Julie Christie, Billy Crystal, Judi Dench, Jared Depardieu, Robin Williams is in there. Jack Lemmon is in there.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, Derek Jacobi, who plays Claudius, you'll recognize him. You'll be like, oh, that dude's in stuff. Couldn't tell you exactly. John Mills, so John Gielgud. If you don't know who those two guys are, fuck off. Rufus Sewell's in it a little bit.
Timothy Spall.
Kate Winslet is a major role in there as Ophelia, and she's very good.
That must have been one of her earliest film pieces.
Would have been, because I think her film debut was that Peter Jackson film, Beautiful Creatures.
Beautiful Creatures, yeah.
Which that was about 94. And Heavenly Creatures, sorry.
Heavenly Creatures,
so this is a couple of years afterward. So cast amazing, but I wanted to pick up on something you said a moment ago. and about how you felt like it was a. You talked about your teachers who you didn't actually know how to translate Shakespeare in a way that was palatable, for want of a better term. This came out the same year as I think the film that maybe did that best that I can think of, and that was Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet. So these both came out in 1996, and you've got chalk and fucking cheese.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like I know a lot of the purists, Shakespeare purists, had a problem with Baz Luhrmann stylizing up Romeo and Juliet that way.
But the thing was, he made it relevant to the younger audience, and
he dragged people out. That was a massive hit.
Yeah. And it had a lot of other things going for it, like heartthrobs as your leads, and the really cool soundtrack that they got involved with that. But it was the vitality of the way it was filmed as well. For me, I think it is Baz Luhrmann's best movie because there's a level of kind of frenetic nature to it, which becomes kind of part of the character of these young lovers just on this passionate roller coaster, and that goes with it. Whereas with Hamlet here, it's so somber. It starts with the death of the king and someone in mourning, and then the revelation of everything that goes on, and it's like, oh, whoa, this is getting so fucking heavy and deeper and darker and slower.
So I watched Romeo and Juliet last year for my other podcast, The Throwback, available now on Spotify. We just reviewed Willow last week, which was
nice.
What a wonderful film, Willow.
And there's the TV series for Disney Plus coming sometime soon.
Color me skeptical.
Yeah.
But anyway, we watched it late last year, and everything about that film is that they've thought, how do I make this more understandable to my audience? And Baz Luhrmann sort of reached out a hand to the audience a little bit. Oh, come with me. It's going to sound weird, right? You know, but it's the music's telling me something. The setting, the cinematography, the art direction, everything's telling me things that I need to know about this scene.
Absolutely.
And if I'm just watching, what's his name, Mercutio, who was a guy who played Mercutio is incredible in it. I can't think of his name. He never really went on to do anything, which was a shame. But
was he Lost?
I think he was, but I was considered being in the TV show, not really doing very much, considering I thought he was going to be a big star after that movie because he was the standout for me in that film.
He was phenomenal.
And like he would be up there giving a soliloquy to Romeo.
Perigno.
And of course, I think he was in Showgirls too, by the way.
He was Link in the Matrix sequels.
They said about them the better. But you didn't necessarily need to understand every word that Mercutio was saying. You got the spirit of what he was saying, and the vibe, and you followed along the story. You know essentially the message he's trying to get across because Baz is putting every element into you know the effort to try and get his message across and make it accessible. This is not that. This is the exact opposite of that. As we said, chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
This is Kenneth Branagh going, it's perfect the way it is, and if you can't understand it, fuck off.
Which just beggars belief when a few years before he did such a wonderful interpretation of Much Ado About Nothing. It was just a beautiful piece. There was life, there was frivolity and joy, and yes, it is a comedy, but he portrayed the language and everything about it so much more articulately compared to this, where like in the opening of Romeo and Juliet, they're talking about, I draw my sword, and they pull out guns, and they're just moments where they just snap to it, and it's just little detail, like saying that it's a sword, the brand of the gun is sword.
Paul Sorvino, fetch me my broadsword, and he goes for his shotgun, and it says broadsword on the side of a shotgun.
Exactly. Just little nods like that just make you clue into, oh, okay, I think I'm starting to translate this in my head. I can now work out modern similes and understand it. Whereas with Hamlet, it's so much about sort of like Kenneth Branagh just looking at himself and just being really serious. And you're like, okay, he's pissed about something. He's keeps going about his father. Okay, yeah, I'm supposed to be angry here, but I don't really know why. And there's never really any sense of explanation for anything that happens. If you get it, you get it. But it's a study rather than a form of entertainment.
I think it would be massively helpful if you were already familiar with the story.
Yeah.
That's why I said the only thing that really helped me was being able to refer back to go, that guy's Scar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jeremy Irons' character from The Lion King. Okay, Claudius is Scar. Got it. Right. Yeah. And, Julie Christie, that's Sarabi, and Hamlet is essentially, what's his name? Simba. And I guess Guildenstern's Rosencrantz are basically what Timon and Pumbaa, I guess.
More or less, yeah.
and I felt a little bit ashamed. I'm like, oh my God, I am understanding Shakespeare through the prism of a Disney animated animal film.
Whatever helps, though. It is one of the best retellings of Hamlet, though, because it just puts it in a very simple way. And the truth of the matter is that Shakespeare, whilst being very intelligent and articulate, he was a playwright for the masses. And language has changed, which means that to go back to it there, where it is a form of language we don't use anymore, it's hard to understand it. It's like trying to go in and understand a comedy movie from South Korea if you've got no inkling about the society that South Koreans find funny. Because it's very different.
We will try and talk about that because I did see a film that actually kind of sums that up, and we'll talk about that later in the show if we have time. But the 4-hour runtime is also a problem for me. Like I guess obviously what he was making a deliberate attempt to make it as basically a completionist, purist version of his play.
This was Oscar bait.
Did it get any Oscars?
I don't know, but it's the cast, everything.
Put that anyway. We'll check and see if there are any Oscars here. I was nominated for 4.
Yeah.
It was nominated for Best Writing Screenplay based, so adapted screenplay, art direction, costume design, and music. Definitely art direction and costume design it probably deserves, but
music, no.
I didn't notice the music.
I noticed it occasionally, and it was very stock standard, which Patrick Doyle, the composer, he's okay. He's not really done anything particularly notable that I've sort of put into my banks, but he did Harry Potter.
Planet of the Apes, Gosford Park, Thor, Eragon. 4, of course, directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Oh, yeah. There we go. There's nothing really.
Harry Potter movie.
Yeah. That's where I knew him from, I think. And even then, that wasn't the best music for a Harry Potter series. So it's like, okay, sure. But there we go.
I struggle with this so hard. I had to break it up over at least two or three different watches to get through the whole thing. It was uphill all the way. I think you really need to be into Shakespeare to enjoy this.
Agreed.
And be very familiar with the subject matter.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like Amazon are now making a series, in the Lord of the Rings series, it's based loosely on the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like you might need to be a super fan to really get into that. Because I understand the Silmarillion is pretty dense.
Yeah. It's essentially a source book.
It's almost like a extra shit that didn't make the actual original cut. And,
yeah.
It's like I have a record here somewhere of it's a copy. It's a 4-disc version of like Nirvana's demos, and I love it because I fucking love Nirvana.
Yeah.
But anybody else, if you just like a couple of their songs, it would be as boring as batshit, and they're really not very good. They're interesting from a historical. If you're a fan,
yeah.
But like for most people, it's like this is a really shitty version of this song. I prefer the version that got released on the album. Of course you would. And I think, you need to be back here on Hamlet. If you are one of those Shakespeare nerds, super fans, the fact that he's filmed those 2 obscure bits that no one's ever filmed before, I'm sure it would be very interesting.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, well, there's a process of refinement. And The Lord of the Rings is a fantastic book, and it tells everything it needs to. I kind of feel like something to use the Silmarillion as a launching point is good. I don't think that they should have the name Lord of the Rings on there at all. I think it should just be Tolkien's Silmarillion or Tolkien's whatever they want to call it, because putting the Lord of the Rings in there as a name, it's going to make people go, oh, I'm only interested when Aragorn comes in, or Legolas, or any of the people that I already know, this is probably not going to have any of those.
Because it's set thousands of years beforehand. I wonder if this is the thing. I don't know.
No, I don't think
something
it's.
else.
I think that's a game.
Maybe.
Oh, that's an animated series. Yeah, War of the Rohirrim.
But it's I'll probably look at it because I've got Prime. So but I'm not a purist. I remember purist friends of mine, Tolkien purist friends of mine, when the films came out, going, "I'm really disappointed that Tom Bombadil's not in it." And you're like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. And then people explain it to me, and you're like, "Oh, I think Peter Jackson probably made a good call."
Yeah, and especially when you look at what he went on to do with The Hobbit, where it was just oversaturation and overuse of extra stuff. Like, no, The Hobbit is a wonderful little book that you could have told in one movie, maybe two if you really wanted to go crazy with it.
3.
But otherwise, 3, you're stretching shit out and unnecessarily adding characters in that were not in it. Don't do that.
So here we have the series will be just called at this stage Lord of the Rings.
Oh, it's a mistake.
Well, we'll see. They wanted their own Game of Thrones, so maybe they'll get it.
That's fair.
So
Amazon have got that in development, and they've got the Wheel of Time series, which is a much better. We want to have our Game of Thrones because the average person probably doesn't know what the Wheel of Time.
No,
series
I'm going to say that Lord of the Rings has a sticker appeal that Neil Jordan's Wheel of Time just does not.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, at least with this, you're setting your bar nice and low. Lord of the Rings, people are going to have expectations straight off the bat. It's going to be an uphill struggle.
I just like if Jeff Bezos is listening, and I know he's a regular fan.
Of course, yeah.
Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yes,
We've said it before.
Mm-hmm.
A TV series based on his shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the Tarzan stuff because
maybe
it's very socially
but dangerous.
But the John Carter stuff,
Princess of Mars stuff.
I mean, we're both fans of John Carter. They did a good adaptation and took out a lot of the very inappropriate stuff that is just littered throughout it. They can update it. You can update these things and still have them being respectful to the source material.
It's a good kick-off point. If you're going to you're just going to kick it off. You're doing similar and you're kicking it off. But no one listens to us. But if you are,
well, we know that the Joe Blow guys listen to us.
They do.
Because they just copy our homework.
But surely the Burroughs catalog would be affordable.
I think it's a public domain. I mean,
some places it would be, yeah.
I would imagine that maybe not anymore because Disney produced and released John Carter, and they are very, very quick on making sure that they hold.
But like Sherlock Holmes is public domain in certain parts of the world now. So anyway, that's just we've gone off Hamlet.
What is it? Now it is your turn. What is the next?
It was a tricky one. It was an uphill battle.
I know. I gave you no exits.
There was no exit. This is Death Machine. Thank God for what's the guy's name? Grimmer Wormtongue. Stephen Dorff.
Stephen Dorff, yes.
Got us out of that one. I was spoiled for choice here. You go for something. I mean, I am sticking with things that I have either not seen or seldom seen or just seen parts of. Mm-hmm. And we're going to follow the late great Richard Attenborough. Mm-hmm. And Miracle on 31st. No, just kidding.
You fucker.
I owe you one for this. I sat through 4 hours of this shit.
I'm sorry. Death Machine. Fuck you.
That was entertaining compared to, at least it was over quickly.
No, it didn't feel like it.
It didn't actually. It kind of did feel like it went for 4 hours. We're going to go somewhere great though. This is a treat. We're going to be watching 1963's The Great Escape.
That's good.
I feel like I've seen most of it, but God, I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched it start to finish. And if I have, God, it had to be 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time. This is kind of the shit that my dad would put on and just say, yep, you're watching this. Like, okay, I'm all right with that because this is great.
I think this is fairly acknowledged as a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And I think we saw it referenced again in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where they CGI'd Leo DiCaprio into Steve McQueen's role. So it's a World War II escape from the Nazis film, not like Hogan's Heroes.
No.
It's number 141 on the top 250 on IMDb. So
it's going to be. I'm going to have to start thinking about where I'm going to go next. And I think I actually know.
And this has a pretty incredible cast. Yeah. Steve McQueen, James Garner, Richard Attenborough, Charles Bronson, Donald Pleasance, James Coburn. Those are the ones I know.
So many options.
And there are other people in here who I'm sure are famous in their day who I just never heard of. But I'm sure you'll find your way out of that.
Yeah. I'm going to be okay with that.
They're dipping back to the 60s here, and this is on Stan, by the way. If you want to watch at home, it should be available on Stan in Australia. Can't speak about your foreign streaming services, so check your local directories.
Lovely. All right. 30 minutes in, we are doing well.
Do you need a commercial break, or should we go one more?
Should we go one more?
Go one more. We then didn't get to talk about it because it had just premiered.
Yeah.
The night of the incident.
The night of the blackout.
And we are now 4 weeks in.
Yeah.
I've only seen the first 3 because I wasn't stuck in the car park watching the latest episode.
I was able to watch an entire episode of Loki in my car whilst trying to get out of Doncaster Shopping Centre car park.
Yes. And we are available for sponsorship, Doncaster Shopping Centre.
We won't chastise you at all, I promise.
So we are 4 episodes into the new Disney Plus series, Disney Plus in Australia, starring, of course, Tom Hiddleston as his role of Loki from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We have in there probably the other big name is Owen Wilson in there as Mobius.
Yep.
Richard E. Grant's in here.
He's not turned up yet. Though.
And so Tara Strong. Who probably better known for her voice work.
100%.
If you don't know who Tara Strong is, look up her IMDb page. She's done.
You'll suddenly go, oh, I know all of her work.
My Little Pony, Powerpuff Girls. She's like the voice actress. She's actually incredible.
Yeah.
So we start with those of you who are not. This I would say though, we've said this before. I think we had a person question us back about WandaVision. Or should I just watch it if I'm not up to date with MCU? For this, I would say absolutely not. You do need to be up with your MCU.
I would say so. They do try to kind of put a bit of a launching point because this, I guess, mild spoilers, it launches off from events in Avengers Endgame. And that's where this picks up. So it's... Again, mild spoilers. It's not Loki we see at the...
the timeline here is confusing. So this is
not the final... This is
not the Loki who was... spoilers for a 2-year-old film.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Endgame, put your fingers in your ears. And what the fuck have you been doing?
Biggest movie of all time. No, I didn't watch it.
So Loki who was killed at the start of Endgame by Thanos is not this Loki. This is the Loki who was arrested at the end of the original Avengers film. So in the Avengers Endgame, when during their time travel shenanigans, we see at the end of the Battle of New York that the Tesseract is dropped. And Loki grabs it and boom, disappears. And that is where our story starts.
Absolutely.
He turns up on a desert somewhere and is shortly thereafter arrested by
the TVA,
the Time...
Variance
Authority or something. I can't remember exactly what they're called.
Doesn't matter.
It really doesn't, but they're like the time cops.
Yeah.
And then he is arrested and taken back to TVA headquarters where he's processed through quite a funny sequence.
Essentially like a cosmic DMV.
Very much so. But the aesthetic in this show in the TVA world, I feel, is very heavily Fallout influenced.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah,
so if you're a fan of Fallout, you'll be like, that looks familiar.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic little animated sequence where they explain, they do a nice little exposition dump explaining what the TV is and why it's important. And it's done by the way of a 1950s style animated commercial while he's in line at the TVA. Sort of think the scene in Jurassic Park where they explain how they splice the DNA.
Yeah, that sort of thing mixed with almost like that slightly kind of time out of place feeling of like Tim Burton's Batman or Superman, the animated series, where it's kind of modern, but at the same time it's got like this kind of 1960s 50s Art Deco-y kind of.
It's called
vibe
retro
to it.
futuristic.
Yeah.
Is where it's,
Yeah.
And then we meet Owen Wilson, who is one of the agents who is on the hunt for a variant, shall we say, another time criminal, for want of a better term, who's going around killing TVA agents.
Yes.
And he wants Loki to help him in catching that killer.
Yep.
Because that killer is Loki, a variant, a different Loki from a different reality.
Yes.
So if that sounds confusing to you, I've done my best.
That's pretty good, I think.
The show does contain a lot of that kind of timeline-y, multiverse kind of stuff. So, George, very familiar with comic books. This is a very much trope in comic books.
Oh, God, yes.
Huge trope.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it for a while now because we know the next Doctor Strange film is called The Multiverse of Madness.
Yes.
So, and, we're like, is it going to be Spider-Man going to do this? They teased us and they didn't. And I feel like this might be the setup for...
I feel like it seems like with so far all of the Marvel TV shows that have come out on Disney Plus have been primers for the next movies and just setting everyone up, giving some actors a bit more chance to revel in the roles. Like Tom Hiddleston was a fan favorite as a villain, and people really enjoyed him and they wanted more, but his story came to an end in the movies. This is a great opportunity to branch off and do something else. They're literally coming out with a what if series, which is going to be interesting, and it's probably going to tie in with a bunch of this stuff as well. WandaVision gave Wanda the big focus that she needed if she's going to be as heavily involved in the new Doctor Strange movie as it seems she is. A bit of a resurgence / send-off, depending on how the character goes for Paul Bettany's character. And
then, of course, we basically crowned our new Captain America in Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is what needed to happen. Yeah. You assume the next team-up film will involve...
Of course. There's going to be
Anthony Mackie as the Captain America. Yeah. And so you're right. And Kevin Feige has been out saying this is going to massively change change the Marvel Universe. And part of it is because they basically write out the Infinity Stones in the first episode. They're being used as paperweights.
Paperweights, yeah.
And I know I don't want to go into too spoilery for the next few episodes, but overall, what's your impression been so far?
It's great to see Tom Hiddleston playing Loki again. He is really comfortable in that role. Unfortunately, I feel like at the moment he's losing the level of threat that should underlie this character. Yes, he's the god of mischief, but at the same time, he was the big bad of an Avengers movie, and they have muted him over the course of all the time. He was like a joke for the other Thor movies, essentially, and he got a bit of redemption arc, but he's now the guy that just kind of seems to fumble through shit.
Very Hugh Grant-esque almost, almost like Four Weddings and Loki, kind of like, it's...
Don't give them ideas.
Oh, there's a crossover event of it, and you can have that one.
The Richard Curtis verse.
Oh, no, I'd probably pay to see that. No. But you're right, like he was, if you think back to that film, but the Avengers film, he was really menacing heading into that one. He was menacing in the first Thor movie to a degree.
Yeah.
He was the puppet master pulling the strings, some pretty fucked up shit. And you're right, and this show just isn't, you're right, he has no threat at all, because he's kind of a protagonist.
He's certainly in the first few episodes, he's like doing the typical Loki thing of fish out of water, in essence, trying to gain the system and learn the system at the same time and just fake it till he makes it. But the story doesn't, in the first 3 episodes, first 4 without any spoilers, it doesn't really give him an opportunity to be a threat. It's always, in all of these shows, regardless of who it is, whether they were going to make Wanda the villain, which I was hoping for in WandaVision, or how they treated Wyatt Russell's character, I can't remember his name, US agent.
Fake Captain America.
It was like, is he going to be a bit of a villain character? They kind of balls it up and they just go, oh no, there's something bigger going on behind the scenes. It's like, there doesn't always have to be, you know. You can tell an interesting story that is just self-contained. And this is just 6 episodes. It's not a very big show. And it's like, okay, I've got to the end of episode 4 and it's like, okay, there's someone behind the curtain. And it's like, all right, I probably know how this is going to end, honestly. And it's like, all right.
I found the first 3 episodes a little bit exposition heavy. They kind of felt fillery.
Yeah.
The thing I think I've enjoyed most of it is the relationship between Loki and Mobius. Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston work together beautifully on screen.
Very
and
interesting.
it's wonderful to see Owen Wilson back acting again, because I haven't seen the last thing I saw him in was that weird thing he did with Salma Hayek on Prime. I can't remember what it was called, but it was fucking terrible.
Yeah. You talked about it.
It was bad.
So
but it's good to see him back, kind of in a. But he's not doing Owen Wilson. You know, he's not.
No.
Wow. You know,
like every now and then he says like now.
Yeah.
And it comes through a little bit there, and it's like okay, but it's not distracting. That's all right.
He's not straight comedy, but it's dry.
Yeah.
They're kind of, and he works so well with Tom Hiddleston. So
yeah,
Loki and Mobius. And I've heard people going, "Oh, we just sit around and talk for 20 minutes." I'm like, "Oh, you're tiresome." These are the same people who probably thought the first episodes of WandaVision were boring.
Yeah.
And they wanted more explosions.
Yeah.
So
the production value of this
it looks gorgeous,
is incredible.
It looks incredible.
Yeah.
Where I think for me, my only 3 episodes, I'm an episode behind you, is where it started to trip up a little bit and weaken for me a smidge was on the reveal of the variant. And
that was not surprising.
It was not surprising, and I knew it was going to happen because I think everybody kind of knew it was going to happen. Because I've been watching YouTubers who have been complaining about it.
Yeah.
So if you want to know nothing about anything in this show, just close your eyes, because I'm going to give it
bring up the spoilers thing now.
A smidgen of not about what they do, but just who the variant is.
Spoilers at 42 minutes. There you go.
You've had your chance. It's the female Loki.
Yeah.
And again, I knew this was going to happen, and I didn't really read very much. I just watching, just said some YouTubers who were whinging about it as one of the things that they like to whinge about. And I'm like, that's fine. I mean, and you know, the other thing that people whinge about here has been the fact that he identifies as gender fluid in this, because, well, I mean, in the comic books, he's done all sorts of crazy shit. So, and as has the actual mythical character of Loki. So none of that has been of any bother to me, and I kind of knew it was all going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think the actress that have got to play the variant Loki, the female Loki, for one of her terms, Sophia DiMartino, who I've never heard of before. British actress. She was in Yesterday, which is a film I liked.
Okay.
Other than that, I have not seen anything she's been in.
No.
But I don't think she's very good as an actress. If that her writing, whatever it is, that character isn't working for me. And as soon as she shows up, the show feels very Doctor Who.
That's fair. I don't think she's portraying the character badly. I think she's doing what she's kind of been told to do. I just don't think it's very inventively written, and they are trying to keep it a bit of a kind of whodunit kind of vibe to it, but they're failing in the writing. The writing of the overarching story seems to be very, very lacking compared to how good the banter is between the two of Owen and Tom.
And interestingly, one of the main writer on the series seems to be Michael Waldron, who's credited with 6 episodes. Okay. He's best known for Rick and Morty.
Okay.
And that show is brilliantly written.
Yeah.
So obviously that's Dan Harmon and not this dude.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit like how
Rick and Morty later.
Or like maybe Damon Lindelof, right? Like he worked with Abrams, and all of a sudden he was getting these amazing gigs, and you're like, he's not very good. He's really not very good.
He knows how to do some stuff, like the Watchmen series was actually
that was
good.
One out of the bag.
And you know, there's some people that have a very niche element where they can just pick at it and do something good, but the character seems off base or incomplete.
So you're right. I am prepared to fully give it. It could be the actress, and probably is the actress doing exactly what the director and the writers have asked of it. It just doesn't really work very well for me. It didn't feel exciting. It was not the chemistry between her and Tom Hiddleston's characters was kind of cliche.
Yeah,
it kind of like it's kind of a head-butting thing. Oh, we don't like each other, but by the end we're going to be working together.
Yeah,
and it's really cliche, and that's what it kind of reminded me of. Again, that sort of vibe when Doctor Who meets a new companion.
Yeah,
and she kind of looks a bit like Jodie Whittaker.
The problem with that, I absolutely agree with that. And from episode 3 onwards, so much hangs on that relationship. It's like, okay, wow, you should have worked harder on that if that's where you're going to hang the rest of this story, on their relationship going forwards. Are they antagonistic? What are they going to do? Is he going to backstab her? What's going to happen here? It just feels paper thin. It's like, this is not good enough. Sorry.
I'm being a bit hard. This show, I think, is massively overrated on IMDb. It has an 8.9. It's nowhere near that good for me. It's not bad. It by no means is bad. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah.
But I personally think it's the weakest of the 3 series so far.
I think that's fair. At least with Captain America and Winter Soldier, they were trying to bring in more social elements and just basic things like, did you not earn money when you were an Avenger? And little things like that. So like, oh, you know what? That's actually an interesting little niggle to go for. This is taking place not in the cosmos. This is in offices that are referring to the cosmos and random moments in time for places that we have no reference to. And I'm sure that there are deep Marvel fans who are going, the Roxcorp building is in relation to this story arc, or that planet is in relation to that. That has things to do with Galactus and things like that, or whatever. I don't know that. And it's just like, okay, CGI planet. Okay.
And it kind of felt like the planet on the 3rd episode kind of reminded me of Borderlands a little bit, actually. It's interesting because that film is finished shooting.
Yeah. We've got quite a cast on that.
I'm a bit fascinated to see that because I'm like, hey, Blanchett in a video game movie? Maybe I'll be right.
Maybe this will be the one.
Maybe this will be the one. Maybe. I've only been saying it for 7 years.
Well, we had Sonic that ended up being a success and Detective Pikachu, so there are 2.
You see, it's the garbage video games, the ones that have no story. There's been the ones that have actually made, the ones that have actually had stories embedded in them that you sort of think and go, well, like everybody says how good the Mass Effect stories were. I mean, I don't know. There's been no film of that yet, I don't think, unless Uwe Boll's working on one.
Tried.
But like we've got the Sony ones, Naughty Dog games, the treasure hunting one.
Oh yeah, Uncharted.
And apparently that's got a good story. I don't know. And apparently we're working on the Last of Us movie, so maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, that prediction will be right one day. I might be dead by the time it happens. But I mean, it's Loki from us. It's kind of it's all right.
It's all right. I hope that the final 2 episodes really turn it around. I'm looking forward to seeing what Richard E. Grant does because big fan of his. Love his work always. He always.
It says he's in 3 episodes. So I wonder where he's buried in one of the other ones. So
okay. He's in I didn't watch till the end of the credits.
In the post-credits scene, maybe.
I haven't seen anything. I'll look into that, but unless I really didn't notice things, but I'm pretty sure I know how this is going to end. It is my superpower, as long-standing listeners will know. But who knows if this is the lock to open up the cosmic multiverse that gets fully developed in Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange. Okay, but otherwise, I think this is a bit of filler to get us through and give another character and actor a bit of more love than he necessarily got in the movies.
Nah, it's not terrible. It's just maybe not as good as everybody's telling you it is.
Yeah,
I'm just finding it a bit meh.
I agree.
I see a bit more meat on the bone.
Yeah, it feels a little incomplete.
There you go. We're sticking the boots in tonight. Shall
we go to the sponsors?
We're going to go to our sponsors.
Yeah.
Our sponsors tonight include Sheba Cat Food from 1986. So if we do that, and you'll bear with us a tick, we'll get our sponsorship ready as we regularly do.
Oh, that advert is already impressive.
And you're seeing it, you can see it, yeah. But we are just about okay. And oops, hang on a second, I'm going to do that again. The share audio button down the bottom. There we go.
Share audio, yeah, yep.
And that one, no, that one. And
go in.
And my freaking. There's my audio.
There you go.
Jozzy Sun. Until now, here's a first from Taubman's. Sunproof satin. The first satin paint that goes on just about any surface outside your home, without a primer or undercoat. Sunproof will last as long as any gloss finish, but with a subdued elegance only a satin paint can give. On your Taubman's.
Sunproof satin beats the sun, almost makes it fun, Taubman's goes on like a song.
There are no second chances with microwave cooking. The wrong plastic wrap can turn your duck à l'orange into duck à la plastique. But with Glad Microwave, you can be sure to get it right first time, because it's the only plastic wrap specifically designed to handle the torturous heat that microwaves generate. So if you want the right microwave result, get the right stuff. Glad Microwave.
This is one way to look at a Mars bar. This is another. Full cream dairy milk, natural cane sugar, glucose from wheat, and thick milk chocolate. So as your next Mars disappears from view, remember, it's all the sustaining goodness in a Mars that helps you work, rest, and play.
The room that needs to be more than just clean needs the unique two-way action of Harpic powder. Harpic's bleaching action cleans and freshens the entire bowl, and Harpic powder's foaming power cleans right through the S-bend. Harpic powder, the power to clean, hygienically clean.
Le Specs French lesson number 27.
En vacances. 3 femmes. Il fait... Oh là là. Le Specs. Oh, c'est magnifique. Les garçons. Oh, c'est belle. Elle est très fantastique. Ah, le Specs. Oh, mon Dieu. Oh, quel derrière. Ah, le Specs. Le top.
The new Polaroid Spectra system. Perfection in an instant.
This month in Cosmopolitan, discover the 5 phases of a love affair and learn how to make it last. If you're letting stress wind you up, Cosmopolitan tells how to unwind and perform at your best. Male models, 7 sexy men talk about the dark side of their profession. And Jackie Collins' sizzling new blockbuster novel, Hollywood Husbands. It's all in November Cosmopolitan. Out now.
Funny thing about dairy farming, everything goes in cycles. Oh, yeah? You milk the cows at sunup, you milk the cows at sundown. You send the milk out to the co-op in a tanker, and it comes back in a tub of Devondale butter to give you the energy to get up and milk the cows again, eh?
Devondale butter helps make the day better for farmers' families and every other family in Australia.
Does your dad make Devondale butter?
Of course.
Can't you see our cows on the pack?
Have you noticed how everywhere you go these days, everybody's serving white wine? Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against white wine. It's great with meals. But a lot of the time you want something more refreshing than wine. That's when I have Cinzano. Cinzano Bianco. Soda, maybe a dash of orange. Less alcohol than wine. And much more refreshing.
I don't think anybody drinks Cinzano anymore, do they?
People who are desperate.
I guess. I mean, it's kind of thing. You just kind of think it comes pretty cheap.
Yeah. Well, there is less alcohol than wine.
You know, if it paid us more, we would have probably plugged their shitty product. But as it was,
no, our sponsors are so high profile that we're not actually allowed to talk about them.
That's why they send us those shitty VHS tapes with the bad tracking.
Yeah.
It's all part of a plan. So yes, 1986. Devondale cheese and Cinzano.
Yeah, well, it's very important if you're doing duck à l'orange in a microwave. It's really important to have the right Glad wrap.
Oh, that's a controversial opinion. Orange. I bet there is a microwave recipe of that.
There was the advert for it.
Really?
Yeah, and new technology, Polaroid. In
Right.
an instant. Perfection in an instant.
Seems they still make Polaroids.
I know. They're a kitsch thing that people just have hanging around their necks.
I don't really understand the point because it gets your physical photograph straight away.
That is something that mobile phones can't really do.
So it's kind of like, I mean, it would take me at least 2 minutes to do it with my printer. So, and I don't have to do that thing. But maybe it's just got to be the other retro appeal.
Yeah, I think so.
Speaking of retro appeal, here's something that's not actually retro at all. So that segue doesn't work.
But it's still amazing.
But it's entertaining, and in the end, isn't that the real truth?
It is.
No is the answer.
Did we learn anything?
No. Thank you, Simpsons. So we talk about Black Summer now.
Yeah.
Black Summer is the Netflix zombie series. We have season 2 has just landed a week and a bit ago, I think.
Okay.
Now, I didn't know it was coming. It was quite a nice surprise for me. Those who are long-time listeners, again, you know, there's help available if you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Might recall a while ago I talked about season 1.
Yes.
And I got to be honest, when I started watching season 2, I could remember fuck all about what happened in season 1, except there was zombies in it, and that I quite liked it. And that was about it, really.
It's a good starting point for you. You do like your zombies.
I do. If you don't like, fairness, if you don't like zombies, then this is absolutely not the show for you. If you, I guess, don't like tense kind of shows, this is not for you. Okay. This was a spin-off, I believe, of a previous zombie TV show called Z Nation.
Oh, right, yeah. I remember.
Which ran on the Sci-Fi Channel, I think, in the States. And for about 3 or 4 years, and people recommended it to me occasionally. And I tried it and absolutely hated it. Because it was a weird hodgepodge of a show, Z Nation. I think it was kind of like, it kind of felt like it was trying to be funny.
Yeah, that's right.
So in IMDb it says action comedy drama.
Yeah.
And it had this weird comedic tone to zombie comedies can work. I mean, there was that Warm Bodies.
Warm Bodies and the Jesse Eisenberg and
Zombieland.
Yes.
And let's not forget Shaun of the Dead, which just nailed it. And you get to start and finish that conversation. But so it can work, but it didn't work. And Z Nation also looks super cheap, which I know is shocking considering it's a Sci-Fi Channel, because everything on there looks.
They had a moment where they were making good stuff. It was Battlestar Galactica Revival and Caprica, which then died after one season.
And then there was Sharknado after.
I think so. I think they were on like Sharknado 12 or something
now. So we need that Sharknado Fast and Furious crossover.
It'll happen. Fast and Furious were able to go to space.
I believe the next talk was the next Sharknado film might be set in space. So that might have been a joke. That might have been a joke. Have you actually seen any of the Sharknado films?
No, and I don't have any interest. They're just a standing joke that I want to never, ever truly understand properly. Although, there was something, maybe Sharknado and the Meg?
Yes. Yeah.
Or, see, they could potentially mix the Fast and Furious with the Meg. Jason Statham's in there. It's his twin brother.
Okay.
Another Shaw brother.
Well, So I didn't like Z Nation, but somehow this is supposed to be, I think, supposed to be a prequel.
Okay.
That show somehow it's supposed to be connected in that universe. But the strangest thing for me is that it's a completely different tone.
Okay.
So that works in the sense that I really quite like Black Summer. I like season 1 okay, as I didn't remember very much about it, like the characters, who they were. I remember at the end of a series they raided a building with bad guys in it, I think.
I hope so.
It was kind of a couple of years ago, so I was struggling a little bit there to really remember exactly what had happened.
Yeah.
But season 2, I would recommend watching season 1 before watching this if you haven't. And if you have, like me, seen season 1 and you don't remember anything about it, might be a very good time to actually go back and revisit it and refresh your memory a little bit, because the season doesn't spend any time doing that for you.
Are they long seasons?
No, it's only 8 episodes.
Okay.
They are 1 hour episodes, so they're chunky. Okay. You get 8 hours of content.
Yeah.
And this, so the synopsis: in the dark early days of a zombie apocalypse, complete strangers band together to find the strength they need to survive and get back to loved ones.
Yeah.
That's probably a fairly decent overview. Basically, this season engages in a lot more fractal storytelling.
Yeah.
So we have the same event told from 3 or 4 different perspectives, or we start at the end of an encounter, and then we go back and see what happened that led up to that moment happening.
Okay.
And so the story jumps around in time and perspective quite regularly, and I know that upsets some people. If you don't like that, this is probably going to bother you.
Do they do it well?
I think they do it fairly well.
Okay.
I didn't have any trouble following what was going on. What I did have trouble was caring about most of the characters.
Okay.
So, like, maybe a character pop up and he'd be a couple of times. I think he was somebody in season 1. I don't remember his name. I don't remember what his story was. Yeah, main characters here are the characters of Rose and her daughter, Anna.
Jamie King, who's most people probably know her from Sin City.
Like Goldie. She was in The Spirit. Wow.
Yeah, there were people in Spirit, and that was the thing that happened.
I don't think I ever got around to seeing that. It was terrible, though.
It's not good.
And her daughter, Anna, played by Zoe Marlett, who I don't recognize as being in anything I've ever seen before, but she's fine. Yeah. They're both fine in this, and those 2 characters are probably our protagonists.
Okay.
We also have the character of Sun, played by Christine Lee, who I definitely remember from season 1. She was definitely in it.
Okay.
And she's Korean. Okay. And she doesn't speak English, which is an interesting angle for someone in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, which is an interesting little angle for them to take.
Yeah.
And what I guess season 2 really tells us is the world is definitely in an incredibly chaotic dog-eat-dog, every man, woman, child for themselves phase of the apocalypse. There's this scene where they go to the supermarket and people are just walking out with pallets of toilet paper, and it's just like, and then
no, that was 18 months ago.
Getting confused. That was a different. That was Sydney this week.
Yeah. Welcome to the rest of us, Sydney.
It's very violent and brutal, and like encounters between people over scarce supplies are regular. It's like life is nasty, brutish, and short.
This is mid-social destruction.
Completely. It's completely man in his natural state. It's like dog-eat-dog kind of world now. Okay. He who has the biggest guns. Okay. And there are it's difficult to really understand anybody's motivation other than survival.
Okay.
So great groups of people band together, it sort of says, in an effort to survive. Their only loyalties to their, in this case, Anna to her daughter. There really isn't a great deal of loyalty to each other, and people will switch sides at a moment's notice, given, the right motivation.
Yeah.
And I kind of enjoyed that about this series. Like a lot of it. So this season, there is a group of characters who are sort of a militia kind of group of people.
Okay.
They have body armor, and they seem reasonably well trained. Think of the assholes who raided the Capitol in the US in January. Those kind of assholes. They're cosplaying as soldiers.
Yeah.
And so they're doing stuff. They're like going out and killing our survivors, corpse survivors and like raiding supply caches and trying to catch. There's a regular plot about them trying to find the landing spot for a plane that they keep seeing going overhead.
Okay.
And they're sort of trying to track that down, and they keep bumping into them. We keep seeing what they're doing, but they really don't know who they are. We don't know why exactly they're doing this. What's their story? Why is this guy here? You can see in the picture here.
Yeah.
He covered in blood. Why is he? He's just referred to as the leader in the subtitles all the way through. Who is he? Why is he the leader? Why did I listen to him? Don't know.
Still a better name than the protagonist.
Better than the protagonist. Someone at work once just said to me, could I explain the plot of Tenet to them? I just had to go, dear, I don't think anybody can do that. Maybe Chris Nolan. But that said, that doesn't really bother me because I kind of enjoyed that episodic nature of each encounter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to know everybody's backstory. I don't need it. Whereas, for Walking Dead now, everyone has like an 8-season backstory, and
it feels like there's a lot of shows like The Walking Dead that fall into a trap that happens with a lot of anime, where it's like, it's the big fight. We are going to spend 6 episodes now going into the backstory of every single person that's watching this big fight, just so you know how they feel. That's it. That's all. And then after a year, we'll go back to finishing it.
Yeah, next season we'll get the fight.
Yeah.
I liked The Walking Dead for a time, but it's kind of jumped the shark.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that about this is nasty, British, and short. The encounters aren't all explained. We don't need everyone to have a story.
Where is this set?
In the United States somewhere. If this one is set in the northern states, I'm guessing, or Canada maybe, because it's very cold and snowy.
Okay.
Which is probably not a bad idea in a zombie apocalypse. These zombies don't freeze, though, unlike some zombies.
Okay.
What I said on Facebook, this is what World War Z should have been. And I hope someone somewhere is just, maybe this is successful. I have no idea. It's on Netflix. We really don't know. Hopefully it's turning off a spark in someone's head going, that World War Z property that made $500 million in a Brad Pitt movie, but I thought was terrible. I mean, some people are like, it's a good zombie movie. You take the World War Z logo off it, and you're like, no, it's not.
It's not.
It really wasn't. The pyramiding zombies was an interesting idea. And the video game, we both really enjoyed the video game. It was fun, but the film not so much.
Yeah.
But hey, people like it. It made a lot of money. Before the pandemic, there was talk of David Fincher helming a sequel. I think that's gone away. For now, at least, I'm like, this is exactly the forum in which World War Z would thrive. And people are like, you couldn't film it because it's boring. And I'm like, I think you could. I just don't know if a feature film was necessarily a way to tell the story. And I think a show like Black Summer is a perfect example of why World War Z would work, in the sense that we don't necessarily know a lot about these people. We don't know their stories. We're not with them for a very long time. So we have that sort of a general plot line of Rose and her daughter going through it, but really it's not that much, So I think it reminds me of, because it's so brutal and tense. Like I couldn't binge this show. I could watch an episode at a time. I needed to spend a couple of hours breathing because it was so tense. It didn't quite nail it as it went on, but the first 3 or 4 episodes are really strong. So, look, I like it a lot. If you don't like fractal storytelling, if you don't like extreme violence, if you don't like zombies or horror, these are all probably things to disqualify you. But other than that, if none of those things put you off, this is every bit as strong as the first season, if not better. And like I said, just kind of set that twig off and you're like, why can't we have nice things? Why can't you just like make the World War Z that we wanted and get these guys to do it? Because
hearing you talk about it, it kind of makes you think the perfect way of creating World War Z would be essentially the way they did the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk TV show, where there was not really an overarching story except he wants to find a way to cure himself. But every week it's just like, okay, he's just moving into this. There's not really any connective tissue from this one to that one. Yes, there are a couple of characters that repeat because they're chasing him down and hunting, but it's just him in this scenario dealing with...
What I do is that the character, the narrator character, is interviewing people about the war after the war.
And it could just be an anthology series.
Which I think would be fine. I mean, I think it would be cool. Like, do you remember the TV show The World at War?
Yeah.
The British documentary series narrated by Laurence Olivier.
Yeah.
I reckon it was something like that, but it was
Yeah.
it was fake. It's like, you got
it like it's
Kenneth
real,
Branagh in to be your, the World War Z, and he's narrating a show about, a documentary about a war that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That would be fucking cool.
It would be cool. And you could even, if you really wanted to, you could get different directors in just to have that little bit of a flair and just go like, oh, okay, this particular part of the story, we're looking at what happens in Australia during this time. Get an Australian director, George Miller, to come in and do one. Oh, we're going over to America, we're going to England, France, wherever the story takes place, and just get that little bit of flavor coming in. It's like, yep, we're just sourcing. It's just an outsource. This is a global production where 2 weeks of filming, you're doing this story. It's held together by Kenneth Branagh doing the...
Well, think of it a little bit like what they've done with The Mandalorian, because we had Taika Waititi doing an episode, and you had other people doing episodes because they were interested in it, and the thing is, most of the material is untouched because the film didn't use any of it except for a little bit of the Israel scene. But maybe that would be a link into the movie. I don't know. But anyway, I know I rave on about it ad nauseum because it's such a great book and it's such a great story, and it would be great to see it turned into something. But I don't like our chances. But Black Summer will tide you over it for your zombie needs.
Okay, cool. Quick question. What is your favorite representation of a zombie?
Oh, the Romero zombie. There is only one valid kind of zombie, and that is the Romero zombie.
Fair.
Look, I liked Dawn of the Dead. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when we did Army of the Dead. I am a fan of that Snyder film, and the fact that they ran was kind of spooky and scary. It kind of made more sense in the 28 Days Later because they're not dead. As Simon Pegg has been fond of saying, death is not an energy drink. So
I love that throwaway line that's heard in Shaun of the Dead. So like, suggestions that it's a rage infested zombies is utter bullshit, and it just cuts off. So
I don't like. I'm not a massive fan of a running zombies. Like I said, the pyramiding zombies in World War Z was an interesting new take on it, and all right. But I think the Romero Shambler zombie is more traditionalist. I think. The idea that one isn't scary, but 1,000 is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the fact that he actually used social commentary as well to make it a compelling, interesting story.
Well, Romero's
certainly
he invented the genre.
Yeah.
Basically. So
yeah, The Godfather.
I mean, all being said, my bias declared. Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorite films of all time. I have like the $180 version special edition box set thingy out there on DVD, and I don't own physical media anymore.
I don't know. You get in the habit again. You watch 16 Candles on this.
I don't own it though. Somebody else owns that.
Yeah. There's convenient excuse there.
And they know
like
who
his love of musicals.
Somebody else owns the 16 Candles DVD. It's not me, and they know who they are, and they are listening. So they can answer that one, not me. Should we talk about Pixar?
Yeah, let's talk about Pixar and the potential problem that I see developing with them.
So the new Pixar film has landed on Disney Plus. It is free to watch for anybody who's watching Loki.
Again, much like how Soul was, but
there's no Mulan, The Last Dragon.
It seems like Disney entire is all the premium stuff, and their subsidiaries, the Fox, the Pixar stuff, it just goes wild.
And I think some people at Pixar were kind of pissed about that because I think this was going to go to theaters at one point, and with the COVID, the unknown virus of unspecified origin, is still doing a number in certain parts of the world. Sydney. So I didn't actually know this existed until you mentioned it to me last night. So I went out of my way to find a copy and watch it.
It's just making me look bad, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I would like to posit a theory to you, and maybe this is similar to yours. We didn't talk about this before we went on air because you get it first.
Yeah. Unedited.
I feel like Pixar has two production teams now. It has the A production team and it has the B production team. And this is squarely in the B production lane. This is the A team has just done Soul. They'll move on to whatever they're moving on to next. all the while we've got a B team. We had the Good Dinosaur a while ago. They finished the Good Dinosaur, but B team move on to Luca. I think this is B Pixar material.
I absolutely agree, and I feel like the longer Pixar is under the stewardship of Disney proper, the weaker their storytelling is slowly becoming. Like Soul was beautiful, and it challenged a lot of concepts. It ended up kind of losing it because it went a little bit too deep down at the metaphysical, spiritual side of things, and that's just not easy to translate into any form of media. But it still had heart and soul to it. Pardon the pun. Whereas this, it feels like they're trying to do a bit of what Studio Ghibli did so well with things like Ponyo and Kiki's Delivery Service, where it is a young person's story. This is very much this is Disney laser focused at being a young person's.
I felt that as well from almost the minute the film started. Like, whereas a film, I think the true brilliance and genius of Pixar is they make family movies, and family movies in the sense that it meant once upon a time.
Yes.
Whereas you could take your kids along to see a family. I want to say Raiders of the Lost Ark, but maybe not.
My thing would be something like Up, where it is. They've literally got two generation characters in there, the young child and the old man. They have always excelled at layering meaning on their stories.
Any of it, a Toy Story film. Yeah. So that was a kid's film, but there was so much hidden meaning in there for adults and jokes. Through to, as you sort of said, Up, or my favorite is Wall-E's Pixar, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of my very favorite.
I think that's my favorite Disney film. Is like it's such a beautiful film, but that you can take your kids and they will be utterly enthralled. The Incredibles,
yes,
utterly enthralled. But
for the adults, they're kind of looking at it going, "Oh fuck, yeah!" They're actually talking about deeper things.
There's all sorts. The emotions one, Inside Out. Like, what a masterpiece that was!
Yes.
Like, the kids are going to love it. Yeah, I mean, that's Pixar's genius, is that they've been able to land them where you don't. Doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah.
Their audience is anyone.
Yeah.
You got a pulse, you can see a Pixar film.
Yeah.
This film, you're 100% right. Felt like I was watching something made, targeted, laser focus, as you said, at kids.
Yeah. And no more is that shown than the way that the story ends. So we've done it the whole episode. We have not talked about any of what these movies are. We haven't explained at all. But Luca is about in
fairness, if you don't know what Hamlet's about.
That's true. Luca is a sea monster that lives in the ocean near a very idealistic, quintessential, stereotypical Italian township.
Village.
Yeah, it's the closest thing that Italy would have to a seaside village. And
they've got seaside villages, don't they?
Yeah, but when I think of village, I think of where I'm from. And
that's racist.
Yeah, damn right. British.
Going home, ladies and gentlemen. It's going
British. Home. But it is so, everything about this is idealized. There is essentially every character is a stereotype. And it's just Luca wants more than what his life is, which is very, very familiar territory for Pixar.
Yeah, very familiar for Disney. Well, you are fine the way you are, and if people don't like you the way they are, and not everyone will like you the way you are, but you should be proud of the way you are, and that's fine, you know.
But in this world, these sea monsters, when they get up on land, when they dry off, they have human form. And it is Luca discovering who he wants to be. He learns about schools and friendship with people and the world out there, and his eyes are open. And in the end, he just goes off. It's like, wait, what? You're just telling me that a sea monster is just going to be fully accepted going out beyond this very enclosed little community? No, he's going to fucking die. He's going to be on an autopsy table in a day and a half. Sorry. No, and that is where it absolutely nails the fact that this is just for kids. This is not at all trying to tell anything for adults. And it's really sad because Pixar can do so much better.
In this sense, I think if you've got kids or younger people who might want to watch a film like this, I think they're going to be quite satisfied with it. I think they're going to like it. I think it does what it does quite effectively. It's kind of vague, unfocused. It kind of meanders through at its own pace. It's got there. It's, hour 35 minutes there, and it's gone. Doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't do anything largely wrong.
Yeah.
And I guess Pixar are a victim of their own success here in a way.
Yeah.
That I think if this were a DreamWorks film, we'd be like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
But Pixar, just when you've been nailing, like I said, films like Up or WALL-E or Inside Out or Toy Story, which are just acknowledged masterpieces in the genre.
Yeah.
If you produce something that's just kind of middle of a road, you're kind of like, all right, I guess. I mean, it's just unusual to find a Pixar film that feels so half-baked.
Yeah. It's missing that special Pixar sauce. And I'm just looking back now at the Pixar movies. You have Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, Cars 2, Brave, Monsters University, Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, Cars 3, Coco, Invincible, Incredibles 2, Toy Story 4, Onward, which was very boring, Soul, and Luca. Their next one is next year called Turning Red, and then they've got Lightyear, which is a Buzz Lightyear movie, also in 2022. So they have gone from their first movie was Toy Story 95, then it took 3 years for Bug's Life, then Toy Story 2 came out just a year later, 2 years Monsters, Inc., 2 years Finding Nemo, 1 year Incredibles, 2 years Cars, 1 year.
I feel like they're getting faster.
They're getting faster, and they're overall losing a bit of quality, in my opinion. They're still generally leagues above the other big companies that are making animated kids/family movies, but that special element of really taking that animated mindset of every frame counts and put everything you can to every shot feels like it's going, well, no, we've got the main story here and that's our focus. And it's sad to see that change.
Turning Red sounds pretty lousy, actually. But
what's this?
It's not, a 13-year-old girl turns into a giant red panda whenever she gets too excited. That doesn't sound terribly inspiring, but hey, look, maybe it'd be really good. Does that look really Aardman-esque to you, that picture?
Actually, yes.
I'm looking here, and I don't see any Aardman involvement here. It's written and directed by someone called Domi Shi. So if you have to have a look at what we're talking about here, have a look at the IMDb page for Turning Red. There's not a lot of info there, but there are some pictures of some of the early artwork. And that one in particular here, one of the pictures here of a girl smiling, looks very Aardman.
Yeah.
I'm talking Aardman, we're talking Wallace and Gromit. Kind of
Chicken Run.
They look like their characters so weird, considering it's Pixar. It's a shame, but I mean, again, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just kind of,
I will say it was really lovely, kind of flight of fancy. The quality of the animation was beautiful. The water effects and just the way that the town looked was stunning. It's like, I would love to go there, but it's it just feels shallow, which is ironic considering it's a sea monster.
And it's interesting you mentioned Miyazaki, because director Enrico Casarosa, and like a very Italian sounding director, I don't know. He has worked on other Pixar things, but he is Italian. He's he talks like, hey, amor, why are you speaking no accent no more? Like they're very kind of like, I'm like, I don't know. It seems a little bit cliche. Is that okay still to but anyway,
particularly the bully.
Yeah, he's got a very Italian accent. It's like someone from a pizza commercial from the 80s, The director Enrico Casarosa stated that he drew inspiration from films of Hayao Miyazaki when creating the film. The character Luca's original name was Porto Rosso, a nod to Miyazaki's Porco Rosso.
That's right. That's the name of the town. Yeah.
In the final version of the film, the character's name was changed and the name of the town was changed to Porto Rosso.
Yeah.
And what it made me think of was one of the interesting aspects of the film is this town. One of the motivating story arcs is the two sea monsters come out of it who actually have to compete or choose to compete in like a triathlon.
Yeah.
To win money to buy a Vespa, and I seriously, someone at fucking at Pixar must have money in Vespa because they go hard.
Sponsorship.
But they're part of it. One of the legs of the triathlon is eating pasta.
Yeah.
Which again, I'm like, is that okay? Or are we just making fun of Italians now? But the actual pasta and eating it, the pasta looks fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it made me think of like you talked extensively about anime like Food Wars, where how amazing the food looks in Japanese animation.
Yeah.
Or even in the limited Miyazaki films I've seen, that they put a lot of effort in Japanese animation into into food.
I guess it's part of the culture, and that sort of like delicate finish and presentation of food in a lot of Asian cooking, and it is part of the heart and soul of Italian culture, is like having big meals with all the family around and the friends coming around and everyone just sharing this big bowl of pasta and salad and everything, and it's part of it. So I kind of get the importance of making it look good because it is part of the culture, I guess. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, it's funny. Someone once told me to go on the Mediterranean diet once to lose weight, and I'm like, have the Italians heard of this? Is this person not supposed to have any pasta?
Pasta, pizza, lovely.
Last time I was there, Italy was on the Mediterranean. So, anyway, that was just me being a smartass because I really didn't want to do it. But that was what was one of the interesting aspects, was watching them eat this amazing looking food, and that made me think of like, wow, this actually does remind me a little bit of the limited Japanese animation I have. So, and not surprising to see that Miyazaki is an influence, but I don't think this is anywhere near. Like, whereas a lot of Pixar stuff you could probably have in a conversation with the Miyazaki work, I would argue.
No, that's fair. That's
but
fair.
this, not so much.
No, this feels a little bit like almost like a high grade homage to it by lesser masters. Not intentionally being detrimental to him, but I can kind of see what they're trying to go for, but they haven't perfected the way that they tell these stories and the way they present them. So it just feels like a bit of a knockoff.
It's fine, but not great.
It's fine, yeah. Should we go on to Rick and Morty now?
I've only seen the one episode so far.
Me too. I'm halfway through episode 2, but
didn't have enough time in the car park.
That was it while I was eating cold chicken before coming over here.
I've seen episode 1. Episode 1 is called Mort Dinner Rick Andre. And Rick hosts dinner for his ocean-dwelling nemesis while Morty gets the wine. I thought this was an excellent intro to season, 5?
Yeah.
We meet a fantastic new character of Mr. Nimbus.
Who did the voice of Mr.
Dan
Nimbus?
Harmon.
Oh, it's Dan Harmon, okay. Yeah.
He doesn't do a whole lot of voices on the show, I think, Dan. It's been Justin Roiland.
Yeah, Justin Roiland.
And I was so sure that it sounds like the kind of character that Justin Roiland would have come up with. But, who is a hypersexual undersea sort of an Aquaman knockoff?
Kind of. I guess if Aquaman and Orgasmo kind of had a weird offspring in the world of Rick and Morty, it's bizarre because it ends up being that it's an interesting kind of analysis of the relationship that he has with the first person that Rick Sanchez has ever said, my nemesis. It's like, okay, this is going to be an interesting relationship analysis, and it works really well by the end of it. It's like, it kind of feels a bit shitty, and more of the focus goes on Morty this time, and I love the side
story, the B story of Morty.
It's so good.
Spoilers, if you don't want to know anything, it's on Netflix in Australia, by the way. Yes. So I don't know, Comedy Central in the States, I think.
Yeah.
So Mr. Nimbus is coming around to have dinner with Rick to sort of come to a truce. So
because they crash landed
their ship in the ocean. and he gets some cheap wine, and to age it up, he creates a portal to somewhere where time passes faster than on Earth, and so he goes and puts the wine in the through the portal, and then sends Morty to go and get it. And in doing so, Morty opens the portal and goes in to get the wine. Someone from that world says, "Oh, do you need a hand?" and helps him carry it into planet Earth. But going back through the time portal while he was on Earth, 10 years or something's passed and everyone's dead. And of course, because Morty's seen coming back and forth to get the wine, he gets to blame for.
He essentially becomes like the Antichrist for this entire civilization. It's like, he will be back. He will. We must be prepared.
And each trip back in to get more wine becomes increasingly more fraught as the technology in the time passing fast world.
And then they pull in Jessica as well, and just the journey that she goes on. It's now sort of like, okay, that's a really cool way of just another reason why her and Morty don't get together, because she's seen some shit.
She's probably about as much depth and development as Jessica has ever gotten in an episode.
Just her last line of the episode is like, "I'm a time god now." It's like, that's fucking cool.
It's and I think it's the kind of episode that's going to be rewarded with multiple watches, and I think that's something it's one of those shows for me. I can just go back and
you can
watch
just
again.
It's really
really fun episode, and this is what I was saying earlier. That guy who did the writing for Loki, and you're like, oh, wow. I mean, it's nothing compared to what Rick and Morty do on a weekly basis. Obviously, you've got a little bit more freedom in an animated show for adults than a Disney flagship TV property, but
but still,
I think the credit for writing should go to Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland a little bit more than these hired hands they get in to do things, because at least on the evidence of,
it's like, here's basically what we're going to do. We've pretty much written it out. Can you type that up for me? Be a dear.
I'll be honest. I don't know exactly how much hands-on. Dan Harmon is kind of a producer. This episode, for example, was written by a guy named Jeff Loveness. He's the writer and the main to the credit here, and he's done stuff with The Office, I think. Here, he's writing Ant-Man and the Wasp. So there we go. It's a bit of a Disney thing happening. He's written for Jimmy Kimmel.
It's a lot of that witty banter, which makes sense considering the fast, rapid-fire nature of Rick and Morty, and it is kind of a skit show.
A little bit.
Those little moments, and that they just end up escalating it throughout the episodes. But I'm enjoying it so far, and what I've watched of episode 2, it's good. They are very good at kind of going, yep, we are going to kind of lampoon a lot of the stereotypes and the tropes of sci-fi and just mock the ever-living shit out of them. It's almost like sci-fi roasting, and they do it very well. This episode, it's a lot of that kind of clone stuff, and do you know you're a clone, and going in with those tropes.
That makes me think there's that joke in the first episode of Loki where he goes through a robot detection thing. And he's like, do many people know I'm not a robot? What am I? Maybe I'm a robot.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me think, oh, that feels very Rick and Morty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm hopeful that I've read a few reviews of the early stuff for Rick and Morty, and people saying, oh, it's not as good. It's showing that it's, maybe it's got a little bit of lifespan on it. But I'm really enjoying it.
The first episode had a 9.2 on IMDb, and fairness, I think it's the fans who vote on these things. But, just that B story is probably the strength of it for me.
Yes.
The Mrs. Nimbus character was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But especially then also there was the interplay with Beth and Jerry, who are like, we're a progressive couple. We watch porn together.
We're sex positive.
And that was fun. But I think the B story with Morty here was a really
that was
the part, and that didn't show any drop off to me.
No.
And I think it's a show that people are looking for it to drop.
Yeah.
Because it's been its quality. It's been a bit Pixar, right? Like,
yeah,
we were talking about it a few years ago. Like, they're going to drop one day.
they're going to have another cast.
But this is just the quality of the 4 seasons has been insanely high.
Yeah.
And you go, wow, they've turned this around in less than a year. That's fast for them. So, they can't keep this up forever. So people, it's like tall poppy syndrome here in Australia. We're just waiting for them to stumble.
Yeah.
To use a sporting analogy, for those who are cricket fans, Shane Warne, the great Australian leg spinner, I think for every Australian summer for the last 10 years of his career, my dad would say at the start of the summer, nah, he's finished. And as he would go on to, break records and just be, the legend of a sport that he is. Maybe he's not such a legend of a guy, but an amazing player. And eventually you got to go, no, eventually you'll be a bit like me with my video game movie prediction. It'll be right eventually.
But time makes fools of us all.
So I don't think Rick and Morty for me, but one episode in, off the strength of this, it didn't seem.
Yeah, I think it's great so far, and I'm looking forward to. It's annoying that it's just one a week or whatever it is.
But if it was all at once, we would have binged it all by now.
Yeah. Exactly, and this is a mid/semi post-COVID world where people have rediscovered the importance of releasing weekly because they need conversation to keep going, and they don't know how long they're going to be able to go back into production for.
Are we?
Keep dropping my damn phone.
This is why we don't do it in person anymore.
No, I get drops.
We need a table,
very
a bigger table.
Yeah.
If we could be good with Rick and Morty, I would like to quickly talk about a film I went to the cinema to see. It was actually after.
He thinks that everything revolves around.
It was actually after lockdown too. So after lockdown,
there is no such thing. We haven't reached that point yet.
The cinema to see a film, an Argentinian film.
Okay.
Do not see many Argentinian films. I think this may be the first Argentinian film I've ever seen. And this was actually Argentina's nomination for Best Foreign Picture at the Oscars last year, I think.
Okay.
And the film is Heroic Losers from 2019. Now, I would just like to call out that this is the English title, and it is shit. The actual Spanish title, or Argentinian title, for want of a better term, is The Odyssey of Fools, I think. It's kind of a better title, I think.
Yeah.
But all the way through his film, I'm sitting there going, oh, yeah, someone's optioning this. Okay. Someone's so going to remake this. Like Dinner for Schmucks, from that one that came out was a remake of a French film. Or, someone from Hollywood's going to be going, oh, there's an easy win.
So what's it about?
In the times of the infamous Argentinian Corralito, the neighbors of a little town trace a plan to recover the money they lost after learning that their bank manager and corrupt lawyer have stolen it. Now, just sort of referencing earlier, you were talking about it with Hamlet. It's sort of like there's a film with implied knowledge or assumed knowledge.
Yeah.
This is that film.
Okay.
So if I just told you it's in the times of the infamous Argentinian Corralito, like, what the fuck is that?
You mean you don't know?
I do now. You'd probably be like me and just go Google that. And what was the Argentinian Corralito? You really do kind of need to have some knowledge of what it was. The Corralito was the informal name for the economic measures taken in Argentina at the end of 2001 by the Ministry of blah, blah, blah. So it was basically an economic crisis that took place in Argentina in 2001.
Okay.
And it's very important in the film in the sense, like, the film opens, we have our protagonist, Thurman Palasi, played by Ricardo Darín, who's kind of the Argentinian George Clooney.
Okay.
The Silver Fox. And his wife, whose name escapes me right now. I think it might be Lydia. I could be wrong. But his wife, and they are gathering money from their people in their small town to reopen a granary that is closed down and run it as a cooperative. And they feel like, if we get everything together, we can start making money together again as a community. So they basically take the life savings of a bunch of people who live in their little town, with a view to buying this granary from the people who used to own it. And, the whole film starts from talking about it and going, oh, yes, we're going to do it. And then it'll be like, August 2001. And people will be like, I'd be like, That's important. Now, I should note, I saw this with somebody, and they know who they are, who is of Argentinian heritage and has spent time living in Argentina, who was very kindly leaned over and whispered to me and gave me the heads up that this is like a month before.
Who's that guy?
I thought they killed that guy. Pretty much. It was a little bit like that going, in September is when the economic crisis took place. You're like, oh, okay. So it'd be a little bit like, imagine that like 9/11 was this obscure little event that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
And someone's like, oh, I've got a plane ticket, yay! And it says September 9th. Yeah. September 11th. And you're like, and, you know, if you didn't know what it was, you'd be like, is something important happening that day?
Yeah.
So that is an interesting angle for a Western audience. Now, eventually you'll figure it out, right? Because the film will explain it. But some of the impact is lost. Like, you're like, oh, that's bad timing, right? You're like, August 2001. Okay.
Yeah.
But essentially what happens is they give her enough money. They don't have enough money to buy it outright, so they have to get a loan. So they take it to the bank and they put it in a safe deposit box. And you're like, ooh, because I know what's coming.
Yeah.
So during the economic crisis, basically, the government almost, and someone's going to correct me here, and then I'm very wrong, but they almost repossessed people's bank accounts. They basically took their savings.
Okay.
Or if you had savings, you could only withdraw like $100 a month.
Wow.
At ATMs or at banks and stuff like that. So you were like, was this incredible financial crunch in Argentina. Yeah. So these guys raise $150,000 from all their friends and stuff. And they go to the bank and they go, hey, you know, I would like the loan. And the guy's like, they get bank managers like, can't help you with the loan, mate, because they think you haven't got any money. Now, if you deposited that money in the bank managers in Buenos Aires, because it's set in a little town in the middle of nowhere, the bank managers will see that money in your account and they go, yeah, no worries, I can afford it, and they'll give you the money right away. So this guy, again, our Thurman, Palazzi, Ricardo Darren, is there, like, he's been put on the spot. He's like, oh, no, but you have to do it now because we're closing in half an hour, and like, you haven't got time to go and ask everybody whose money it is to whether they want to do it. So he makes the fateful decision to deposit the money.
Okay.
At which point, but the whole gist of it is that the bank manager is crooked, and he has his friend or his collaborator, what do you want played by Andreas Parra. Fortunato Manzi is the big bad guy in this.
Okay.
He is like this rich lawyer guy. So basically, as soon as Thurman's deposited his money, this guy Manzi comes in and he basically gets a loan from the bank. A loan basically takes all that foreign currency, that US dollars that have just been deposited. He basically takes it, and the next day, the banks are basically closed. The run of the banks, and you basically can't get his money. Money's gone, basically. And so that kicks off the plot where some tragedy things happen. It turns out this guy Manzi has actually put the money. He built a safe in the middle of nowhere in this field, like a proper secure thing, a vault, an underground vault in the middle of nowhere, and like that's where he's stashing your money, because where else would you stash it? You can't put it in the bank. So these guys find out about it, and hence you can almost transition there into almost an Argentinian Ocean's 11 as they put together a crew. You son of a bitch, I'm in. But it's like it's more like think of it. You watch the Australian film with me once, The Castle.
Yes.
Think The Castle, right? When you put together a crew, it's not like I need a safe cracker and a contortionist. It's more like each of the guys, they get everybody in the community together, and each of them do have certain skills that.
It's like, oh, we need someone to do this. Well, my grad's good at sewing.
A little bit. It's like that scene in the Three Amigos where we can sew. We can sew. So yeah, they all sort of they all bring their own little thing to the to the table, and they work together to. I mean, let's face it, they're going to get their money back because it's a
turnaround movie.
And the bad guy is really Andreas Parra as Fortunato Manzi is beautifully horrible. Like he looks like the kind of arsehole, the kind of guy you'd hate, and he plays it so beautifully well. Like I was trying to think of a bad guy I could think of who's so effectively horrible. And the only person I could think of was the guy who played the EPA dude in Ghostbusters, dickless.
Oh, yeah.
This is true. This man has no dick. I can't think of the actor's name right now, but
Richard.
Atherton, Richard Atherton.
Richard Atherton.
And he used to say that people would stop him on the street and abuse him.
Oh, dickless.
Yeah, and it was he was perfectly horrible in that movie. Yeah. And he was in Die Hard as well, wasn't he? He was the bad guy. He was the annoying reporter.
The reporter, yeah.
So he just made that role his own. So this guy, I think, did it really beautifully. He loved hating him. And Ricardo Darín is a guy who's, like I said, he's kind of pretty well known in Argentina as an actor. He was in probably the other most famous Argentinian film, Nine Queens, which was remade in Hollywood with John Reilly in it.
Yeah.
Can't think of what it was called. Criminal something. I think it might have just been called Criminal, actually. But don't quote me on that. Yeah, Criminal.
Yeah.
In 2004, which I'm curious to see. But Nine Queens was made in 2000, and this kind of had some crossover to the West. And that also starred Ricardo Darín as a much younger man. But he is a wonderful everyman.
Yeah.
He's so charismatic and very sort of, like Silver Fox, Clooney, handsome, and down to earth and approachable. And he really is a wonderful protagonist in this film. And the band of wacky characters around the town are very amusing. And again, I did have the benefit of somebody with a significant amount of context about Argentina and Argentinian history whispering in my ear going, this is why that matters. But so there is an element of local knowledge, but I think, you can figure it out.
It's pretty easy to translate it. Like, I'm thinking like this is almost like you could do the other side of the story for all the people that got scammed in the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, I mean, you could so easily translate. I was actually sitting that casket in my head while I was watching it going, obviously, maybe this guy, and how would I set it in the States? Like, how would that setup? That setup wouldn't work because there hasn't been something quite like that in the States. So if you said during the GFC and your local bank branch collapsed, because a lot of banks did collapse in the States during the GFC, and, the local bad guy did it, and it would so easily work. And, it would not surprise me to actually see an American remake because it would work. If you get that central conceit under control.
That notion that the community coming together is definitely something that you could easily translate anywhere. I'm looking at it and just thinking, yep, I could imagine Edgar Wright doing an English version of that.
Oh, it was to be a
quaint little town that got thrown out of context or something because of X, Y,
or maybe during the coal miners' strike or something like that.
Anything like that. Because you can get those kind of character actors just come in. So like, okay, you're the village eccentric in this regard.
Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah.
He would be my Thurman, I think, unless you want to go someone a bit younger, but he's just so damn likable.
He's good.
But it would work. It could work here. You could do an Australian version if you really wanted to, but we know it's going to happen anywhere. It would probably be in the United States because it's the kind of thing that they do. And look, this is a really fun, enjoyable film. You don't really need to know what all these things, the Corralito is, and there's a guy in it who used to work for the road authority, and he goes on about being a Peronista, the Peron being the Evita was Eva Peron, the wife of the president who was Manuel Peron, I don't know, but these little jokes like the Peronistas is a political movement in Argentina. I knew that much. So I'm like,
again, evidence of his musical love.
Because I knew Evita. When I met my friend who is of Argentinian heritage, I think things I knew about Argentina: Evita, Maradona. They like soccer. That might have been about it.
That's fair.
They have a light blue flag.
Yes, they do.
I think my knowledge of Argentinian stuff.
We are not worldwide characters.
Well, I mean, I think I do okay, but like it is a country you don't. And Nazis went there.
Oh they did.
So, that's probably not something you'd like to advertise, I would imagine.
That's the twist on the heroic losers. They're actually Nazis.
Dr. Mengele or something. I think he was in Bolivia or something. But yeah, so I didn't know a lot about. And when I the crisis, I'm like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember that happening. But you don't need. There's little bits like that. You're kind of probably going to go over your head if you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't have somebody filling you in on all the bits, but. For the most part, I think you're still going to have fun with it if you get a chance to see it. So it was showing here in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. I've got no idea if it is showing still. Maybe it'll pop up in a streaming service somewhere. It probably will because they're gagging for content these days. And look, you put the subtitles on. It's a fun little film.
This sounds like the perfect antithesis to Hamlet, where yes, kind of having a knowledge of their time and the very specific things that they're talking about, but still the story and the meaning, the intent of everyone involved, you just understand it. Transcends language. It transcends this.
They're universal characters, right? We've got a guy who's honest and down to earth and community minded, and these people are honest, down to earth people, and they're scammed by the rich guy.
Yeah.
That's a universal story. It works in any country.
Yeah.
You don't need to. The extra bits that sit around it would help, but they aren't necessary. It's like when you watch The Castle. I imagine.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I kept thinking of a film like The Castle, which is the little guy overcoming the overwhelming, the David versus Goliath myth almost.
Yeah.
If you understood Australian culture, would it help? Absolutely, it would. But I still think people get the gist of that film.
And for something like The Castle, it is like how's the Serenity?
Yeah.
And it's like Bonnie Doon and all that. I've been to Bonnie Doon now, and living up in Kinglake, it's like the chainsaws will be going, and me and Shay will just kind of go, how's the Serenity?
Little bits like that. Like, Dad's favorite show was Funniest Home Video. That was like Saturday night. Hey, Saturday. I think they changed it for the American release.
Yeah.
Because in Australia, it was like the Dad's favorite show was Hey, It's Saturday. The only thing you liked better was the best of Hey, It's Saturday. Like, even that gag's kind of dated now because that show hasn't been on the air for a long time. But I think they changed it to the Funniest Home Video when they.
It's like what they did with Captain America: Winter Soldier, and there was that list.
And they Vegemite and Tin Tams.
Things like that. It's like, okay, that just helps me clue into it a little bit more. All right, cool.
So I dug this. It's directed by a man called Sebastian Borenstein. Maybe he might pop up in the West somewhere. I don't think he's done anything outside of Argentina yet. But so I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole with Ricardo Darin and watching some soap operas and stuff that he was in Argentina. Okay. But I liked it a lot. It's really fun to see something that's just a bit outside your comfort zone occasionally. It's not just an American superhero film. It's a film from a country we don't think about. A country we think about so little that one of the top 5 things we knew about it was that it's the color of its flag.
We're bad people. All right. Well, I think that rounds up this show.
I think it's not bad for our first in-person show for 2 years.
Yeah.
Don't get used to it, people.
Yeah, we talked about Hamlet. We are going to be going on to The Great Escape as our next chain movie. We talked about Loki, episodes 1, 2, and 3, loosely, general terms. And we had our message from our sponsors. Thank you very much. And remember, correct Glad wrap on your microwave, duck à l'orange. Travis talked about Black Summer Season 2. We talked about Luca, Rick and Morty, and finished off with
Heroic Losers. Yeah. Stupid name. And we're under 2 hours, so you're welcome.
Yeah.
There's 7 minutes back in your life.
I am going to be talking a little bit about the current hot topic in the anime world of Demon Slayer. I sessioned season 1 of that, which is on Netflix, with subs and dubs for anyone who has one preference or another. We will possibly have Julian on for Fire Walk with me next week. So it's going to be an interesting show.
And we are very close now to finally seeing Black Widow.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we're 2 weeks away. I think we'll be It's next week.
Next week.
Yeah, I'm seeing it next Friday, so unfortunately we won't have
Just missed out, but never mind. We'll still have a little bit more Loki for people who want their Marvel fix, and it'll be a little bit more timely because now that we can actually, I'm close enough to be able to do this. We can do this a couple of weeks now.
And who knows, you might even have electricity back at your normal venue before.
Don't be silly. They're going to get rid of the mold first, apparently.
Oh, okay, that's exciting.
Yeah. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching along live. Thank you for listening. Remember that you can watch us live on twitch.tv/thefriedbrain, as well as YouTube later on, as well as it is streaming live there. YouTube.com/Friedbrain Productions, Facebook.com/George Terran, I think it is.
Hey, Cara Kitty, good to see you.
Hey, Cara Kitty.
Hope you have a lovely day. It is 9:35 p.m. This evening, so it'll be a lovely night and hopefully a wonderful Thursday.
Fingers crossed, and it is my last day of work tomorrow, and then I'm off for a week and a bit before starting my new job, working for the government and silencing people.
That's good. I mean, they need silencing.
Yeah, exactly. Silence the peoples.
And once I have my second shot and my 5G is really powered up, I'll be able to join in.
Oh, yeah. You've got the upgrade.
Upgrade.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night.